for a while. And recently there was a court case out of Australia that I put into the EMDR News site on various things, and birth trauma was one of the things that we have information on. Hey everybody, this is Doc V from EMDR News. Good to see you again. It is Wednesday. Wednesday is my favorite day of the week. They call it Hump Day, but for me, it's always like it's all downhill from here. So it's been my favorite day for a very long time, it actually brings up positive feelings because you're looking towards the weekend and everything else. So which is really cool because then I'm more uplifted Wednesday through Sunday. Well, maybe not Sunday, but Wednesday through Sunday. Then and it's only Monday and Tuesday that are my, gotta do this, right. Gotta get through this days. I don't know how you all feel, but that's the way I feel. So yes, today is what day is it too? It's like the 26th, I think. Yeah, the 26th. So we again are coming at after the EMDRIA 2026 conference. It was really cool. It went really well, I think. And it's funny because I was reading some comments on what other people remember and other people want to take from it. And I'm like, these people didn't even go to the same sessions that I did. So there seems to be sessions for everyone, and you could completely go to a completely different set of sessions of classes or workshops than somebody else might. So what that means is that people can have completely different experiences, right? So the things that I went through, I mean, before we even started on the actual conference, we had trainer day, and I thought that was fantastic. Tracy, who is Andrea's educational uh, person. She provided a class on adult education, and I already have my. She's a doctorate in education. I have my master's of education in adult and continuing education. So it's really something that I'm interested in. So it was a really good class to kind of fit in with adult education and how to really change or focus your training on the adult learner. So that was really cool. And then we had Anna Gomez do the consultation day piece, which was nice, and kind of went into more relationship or relational type ideas and theories related to consulting. So really good stuff. And then I had Gary Brothers, which I thought was good, and he worked on chronic pain. And what was the other one? Susie Matthewson of EMDR 2.0 fame did a class on intensives, and those were my favorite that I went to. Um, the place was great, San Antonio or not San Antonio, the Anaheim Marriott is really awesome, and it's really close to Disney, so if you wanna get to Disney, that's cool. They also have a nice strip over there of restaurants, like, Bubblegum Shrimp and, I think Roy's and a couple of others over there. So it's really kind of cool, really centrally located. There's stuff to do if you wanted to bring your family. So we are going back there, as far as I know, as far as the MGR conferences go. I think we're going back there in 2 years. Not 100% sure, but that's maybe where we'll end up. Philly is next year though, so I don't know too much about how it goes in Philly or on the East Coast, but I'm looking forward to it to see what's happening. Most of my MDRIA stuff has been on the West Coast with the summit in Seattle a couple of years ago, and then the two California conferences. Um, it was really cool to see everybody too, because we have the large convention hall or the exhibit hall rather, where you can go in and people have tables set up, and you go and look at what people are doing, whether it's book signings or um, products that are out there, like EMDR kit was out there, bilateral IO was out there, bilateral stimulation IO was out there. So there's a lot of different things that are out there that you can kind of go and talk to people and see what they have going. I think they even had stuff on like transcranial and neck stimulation. A bunch of people have their own little buzzers in their hands, so it's pretty cool to walk around and see what's available. Um, The EMDR Research Foundation was there, as well as the EMDRIA Research Foundation as well. We're collecting money for research. And research again is huge. We want to get as much research as possible out there, and the EMDRIA itself has enlisted MQ, which is a organization that does mental health research, right? And we've enlisted their support in order to help find fellows and to do EMDR work, to do research and really kind of good research, RCTs, et cetera, that can really help us focus our knowledge of EMDR in the North America region. And most of the research right now, anyway, is on the European, over there on that side of the pond. And so we want to kind of increase the footprint over here as well. So that's what MDRIA is supporting. But that was announced, and it's kind of cool, that we're doing that because again, it means a lot. Right now, the practice guidelines and everything, push EMDR for PTSD, although it can be used for other things. That's where all the most of the research is. That's where most of the good research is. And so what that means is that sometimes like insurance companies might end up limiting things, because the guidance says, hey, you can use it on PTSD, but if you use it on this other thing, we won't support it, which is kind of weird in general because like you could say that you're not doing any particular therapy, right? You can do talk therapy and they're going to pay you, but if you say I'm doing EMDR for depression or something, and they're like, well, I'm not sure about that. It's kind of a weird situation where they're kind of being nitpicky in that way, especially since it's still evidence-based, right? That we're using our EMDR on depression. It's still evidence-based, even if it's not as researched. And I do want to say it is researched. We have a whole protocol on it from Ari Hoffman, I believe it is, the DPREND protocol as well. And it's a great protocol. So EMDR does work with a lot of things. I use the feeling state protocol a lot. And Don DeGraff and Reed is doing a feeling state protocol workshop down in Las Vegas soon. I don't remember exactly the dates, but I saw it pop up. And again, he's kind of a mentor of mine, so I like to plug him sometimes for the work that he's doing. He's he does a lot of work. He's got a good, pretty almost a purist EMDR way of thinking. And again, I consider myself a purist in most respects for EMDR. Um, if you're coming to me for consultation, you're going to learn EMDR. It's yes, you'll have some discussion about the other aspects like parts work and other integrations and stuff that you can talk about. However, in the end, it always comes back to, as I like to say, the research protocol instead of the standard protocol, the research protocol, because we know it works, and we know it works with different populations, and we know it works with um, over time, we know EMDR works the way it's researched. So, and sometimes people are like, and we can all agree that this is mostly true, that a lot of the work is with the relationship. But when you look at the research protocols that show EMDR works, generally they don't really have that much of a relationship in our CTs, right? It's, you know, people are hooked up with kind of random clinicians, and they're kind of put through this thing, and everybody's supposed to have the same type of experience so that they can control for variables to see if EMDR works. So EMDR works without so much of a relationship as well, right? And there's evidence of that. So that's pretty cool to know. Also, we found in research recently that EMDR doesn't require, well, I should say trauma therapy doesn't require a huge, long, extended period of preparation. Like prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy don't have much, they have some, but don't really have much of that at all in comparison to EMDR, where it's a little bit more kind of a focus. Of course, EMDR is this a different context in terms of their phase two. It's not just on making sure people can do that state shift stuff, but it's also on getting people's adaptive material on board so that it's more available when you're doing the work. And of course, if you're working with me, then we talk about the timeline, right? The positive event timeline, in order to help people get the information, the adaptive information on board that you as the clinician can also use later on in your cognitive interviews, right? Kind of gives you a repository or a toolbox of things that you can pull from. So it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, so the conference was really good, and Philadelphia is next year. So look for it. And again, they do have pre-conference, like an early bird special thing, right? So, and it usually goes for a pretty long time, but at some point it turns off. So make sure that if you are going and you want to get on the early bird, that you do, right? That you get on the early bird. I don't know when that'll open again. It's next year, so it'll be some time yet. But Philly. So if you didn't go to California because it's too far, Philly's down the street. We got the whole New York, the tri-state area contingent. Come on up, and then all the way down to Florida. Everybody's in the same time zone, so come on up. Um, the ISTSS is in like 2 weeks, so that's exciting. I'm going there too. Right? It's somebody's like asked me, "Are you going to the HAP, the Humanitarian Assistance Program one?" I'm like, "I wish," but unfortunately, no. I have some obligations that I have to attend to. Plus, I'm basically gone every weekend as it is. Going to this conference, going to the other conference, going to a training, out of state as well. As a trainer. So it's been a lot of moving parts recently. So no, I can't make it to the Humanitarian Assistance Program, which is in South Carolina in October. So that should be a good one too. If you're interested, please go. But yeah, I love San Antonio. I'm actually looking forward to going down there. Uh, Texas is a nice place. I like to visit there very much so. I know that some of the um, politics and stuff are a little bit different there for a lot of people in our field. But at the same time, the people are great. It's a good environment and stuff like that to visit. And I love San Antonio. The Riverwalk is awesome. It's beautiful. It's fun. The Alamo is, weird. It's a little tiny mission style church in the middle of a city. It's kind of crazy. All right. And I haven't even looked at what the run of show is, what sessions they have there at the ISDSS, so I'll have to check that out. But I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a good time. And I have Rebecca Case is going to be there. And she is, again, another mentor of mine, or I like to consider her a mentor of mine. We have Chrissy Fairbanks. She's going to be reporting on some research that she did within the VA. So it's going to be a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of good people. Okay, so let's move forward and talk a little bit about the two questions that have come up recently in some consultation and stuff like that. When do you move from phase 1 and 2 into the actual work, right? So that was one. It's fun because I have different levels of people with experience in terms of using EMDR, and of course, any educator or consultant knows, like, you got to understand that they don't know what they don't know, and when you're teaching them, sometimes you're teaching them from the point of course so you always have to kind of pretend like they don't know anything and just kind of move forward and see what they actually do have under their belt. So when do you move from phase 2 to actually doing the work, right? And the simple answer is when they meet readiness criteria, right? And research again has shown that people don't need most often don't need an extended period of time to get state shift exercises and preparation. As a matter of fact, in the session with Susie Mathewson, I'm hoping I'm getting the last name right. I have to check that out. Um, she actually had people be like, "Yeah, I don't agree that people like DID or something like that, they need much more of this background." And she's like, "Yeah, well, the research doesn't show that." So um, within reason, of course. The research didn't show, probably didn't work with all the DID, but the idea was that even with people that are complex PTSD and that kind of thing. They didn't need an extended time of working through state shift skills and everything else. So, meeting readiness criteria. Can they stay in the room? Right, that's the biggest thing. So can they do the work, basically, right? And this is a thing that you can check each time they come in, right? Where are they, right? Are they completely distracted? Did something else happen? Do we have to do EMD on something, to kind of get people back in the room, but yeah, so they have to be able to maintain that dual awareness, or be able to be brought back into that dual awareness, pretty easily. So they have to be able to understand the grounding skills, that, what we might do if they start to drift and abreact, or something along those lines where they're not able to continue. All right. So we can get them back into the room so they can continue. And these things they don't need a whole session in order to get people back in the room most of the time. Right. We can use these grounding skills in between sets. We can, like CPOS, right? Kind of like that. We actually do constant installation of present orientation of safety. Thank you, Jim Knight. But yeah, we could do CPOS or something along those lines, right? Where we have a quirk in the actual protocol so that people can be a little more stable. So there's things that we can do, that we don't need to keep going back to phase two. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. We can't keep going back to phase two. Um, I don't know what that was. I should have looked. So, it's a comment that popped up. Not sure what that said. Okay. So we can keep going, we don't have to keep going back to phase two. Phase two is always there, that if it's necessary. But when we're talking about things like intensives rather, and everything else, it's been shown that we don't necessarily need all of that extra time to work. We can help people get pushed through some of this stuff and still make it, safe, and respect their need to stop if that's the case. But in the same moment, once they stop, what do we do, right? So we might end up going through and trying to figure out what they need in those moments when they throw up their hand. And if we can get them what they need, maybe they can continue, right? And so there's a lot, again, there's more and more research that's saying that we can do this. We can make it something that we can continue to push through. So can they stay in the room? If they can stay in the room, then we're probably going to be able to move forward in the EMDR. Of course, there's also stuff like, do they have trips coming up? Do you have trips coming up? Because in between sessions, if you're not doing intensives, in between sessions, then we want to make sure that somebody's available, or they're able to reach out. Also, it's rude. I like to say it's rude if you're going to start EMDR in like a really bad memory right before they go on vacation or go to a wedding or something like that. Because as we like to say, reprocessing continues between sessions. And so if we're, opening up those doors and being like, hey, have a fantastic time with your family, it's kind of rude. Um, so with that, when we do decide to start EMDR, it might be a good idea to look at their calendar and your calendar so that we understand where we might have to break on some level like that, and what that would look like. So that would be important. Other questions that I got recently were on phase three, and some stuff on getting stuck, right? Because, well, first of all, phase three, we don't start phase three unless we're doing phase four, right? Phase three is the assessment and activation phase. So basically, we're firing it up. We're turning on the TV. You know, so we're doing that. We're getting the work started. So if phase three is we're turning on the TV, right, and we're watching that horror movie, whatever it is, we feel the stimulation come up. That's what we want. You want it starting to stimulate you. And again, Susan Mathewson was kind of alluding to, or saying even, the idea that we might start with the worst memory, right? We want them really activated in order for us to get the best results, right? So there's some research on that. That's where that comes from. And again, that was talking about intensives, but the point here is that we can go towards something that is highly activating, and do this work. But we want the memory that we're working on as activated as we can get it, right? So that's why we ask these questions, right? Is to activate the memory. We do get in phase three some scales, the SUD, subjective unit of disturbance, and the VOC, or the validity of cognition scales, and that's just kind of giving us an idea of how disturbing they subjectively find the memory. And the validity of cognition, we do ask if there's a positive thought they'd rather believe about themselves, but we don't expect them to believe it 100%. So that validity of cognition is saying, well, how much do you believe that I'm a good person, or whatever that thing, I'm safe now? How much do you believe that positive cognition right now as we're starting? And then we continue, right? So the idea mostly is stimulating, and what the question, or what the thought there was, is that, hey, you don't do phase three unless you're going to do phase four, and phase three should not take long, right? Phase three is about activation, so that's all we're doing. If you get stuck because you don't have a fantastic negative cognition or positive cognition, or something like that, hey, if this person's already crying, this person's already having stimulation, you're on the way, right? So the negative cognition, uh, it'll work itself out. You'll figure it out if you haven't already. You, as the clinician, might already have a good idea, but they might have actually said that as the problem, right? But the negative cognition does change over time. You'll jump from negative cognition to negative cognition, depending on who you trained with. When you looked at some of the vignettes and the things that you worked on for cognitive interviews, for example, the thing that they get stuck on is oftentimes not the thing that is the negative cognition. It's a different thing. And in chapter 10 of Francine's book, um, she talks about how people will move from one cognition to another, right? And in terms of doing the work, I think it's chapter 10, in the cognitive interweave section, how people will move and shift in their cognitions and where they can be stuck. And the reason why that's important for cognitive interweaves is so that we can give a cognitive interweave that is the antidote on some level to, or in the same theme rather, of what's happening. So we want to make sure that it's in the same theme as much as possible. And remember, my saying, right, is that there are no bad cognitive interweaves. There's only better ones. And that's assuming that you're not evil and you're not malicious, right? Because there could be somebody, like, I talk to people when we're doing like anger management and stuff like that. I'm like, hey, you have your own buttons, they get pressed. Most of the time, people don't, aren't doing it on purpose. But when these buttons get pressed, you get upset, right? Because you have interpretations, beliefs, expectations, etc., on the world, and then you get upset when they're not necessarily being met. And then in the context of what we're talking about, is that there are people out there that want to push your buttons and know what they are. So generally, as a good therapist, we're not those types of people. We're not sitting there trying to push people's buttons. Um, Generally. So keeping that in mind, we're not doing something malicious in our cognitive interweave, then we'll probably land somewhere. And why that, a bad cognitive interweave that's not malicious, somebody can be like, hey, no, that's not right, right? But the fact that they know it's not right also has the opportunity to move them forward, right? It makes them think. And if they're stuck, if you keep going, like, okay, just notice that, and you do your BLS, they can move out of their stuck point. But if they get stuck, right, it's okay. They're stuck. you know Take some time while you're doing your BLS for a set or two, right, to try and figure out what the next one could be. Again, they're usually intuitive. There's a lot of stuff that you're using as a therapist to align that cognitive interweave with what your client is dealing with and handling in the moment. Okay. Take some time maybe in order to come up with a better one that's more akin to where they are stuck. Okay, so they're stuck in looping, so it's okay. They're already they're not going anywhere. Okay. So the other piece, so we talked about that, right? Trying to get out of three. We talked about continuities a little bit. And the issue that this person was having was that, like after a session, after two sessions, things are getting worse and not getting better, right? And so we're talking about, there's other subjects we could obviously talk about, but we're talking about the cognitive interweaves and how we can use them not just when people get stuck, but near the end of a session so that people can move from being in a distressed or uncomfortable state maybe to being somewhere else, being somewhere that is more positive when they close. And that's an important thing sometimes, especially if you want to keep the client. If you keep putting people in like hot oil, they tend not to come back at some point. You know, so unless they're learning something about themselves, still, there's still some processing happening there that they think is important and helpful. So again, those are some thoughts for you, right? Is to recognize that, hey, and we do phase three only when we're doing phase four. Phase three's main deal is to get somebody fired up so that the brain wants to learn new things, and if that's why you need to be activated. Because if you're hypoactivated, if there's no reason for you to learn anything, your brain's not going to learn anything. Those things aren't going to stick. Phase three, fire them up, do your processing, getting close to the end of a session, you're looking up at the clock and you're like, huh, this person's not in a great place. Then maybe you can consider a cognitive interweave that can move them somewhere so that when they do get to the end of the session, it's not in a negative place and they can go on with their day and feel better about their day and continue to reprocess between sessions with that tidbit of information that they were able to come to based on your cognitive interweave. Good times, right? Yeah. Um, just trying to think if there's any other questions that those are the two main ones that I was going to bring up, right? Is the when do you move from phase two to phase three, and then the when do we use that? Well, what do we do? What can we do at the end of a session so people aren't getting more and more negative after each session? And to be honest, this person that brought this question hasn't really gotten that far yet. They were just worried about what would happen if this was the case. So, they just kind of started with somebody. So, wanted to put that out there. My thing in general is that if you are not progressing uh, after three sessions, then on the fourth session, you want to question what's happening here, right? You might do it beforehand, but at least by that session, you're like, huh, you know, why am I not done this memory? Because, it shouldn't take that long to do a memory in general, right? Again, there's obviously, flukes and stuff like that. But and it's fine at that fourth session if you become, hey, this is okay. This is fine. This is just how long this memory is going to take. So be it, right? But on that fourth session, you want to take a double look at it and be like, huh. It's been four sessions. Why isn't this moving? And take a good look at it. And that's my opinion and what I do. Because most memories won't be that long. So, figure it out. And it could be anything, right? You could be stuck. You could be working on a different memory and not even noticing it. And that happens so much, where people, with the memory that you're working on, the memory itself is now pretty desensitized. Matter of fact, they might not even be able to bring it up, but they're not telling you that, right? Instead, they're saying, when you ask about this memory, they're saying, well, this is bothering me, right? And it's a different memory or something like that. And that happens a lot because it's still disturbing them, right? And they bring it up because it's somehow connected to that memory, but it's not that memory, right? So we want to make sure that we're focusing on the memory that we're working on and be like, okay, let's look at this memory first before we move into this one. We can definitely move into this one, but let's look at this one first and see if we can't close this one up before we start to pile on. It happens so much. And this also is something that happens with your SUD, right? Because, we try to get our SUD down to a zero, and most of us are successful most of the time at getting our SUD down to a zero. Hold on 1 second. Charging something here. Battery power. Yay. Okay. So most of us are working on getting something down to a zero, right? And that's the hope, the wish. That's the focus that we're doing. So this happens with that too, right? Because people when they are working on this and like it's a one or a two or a three, and like, okay, and you work your angles in order to try to bring that down. And then at some point you ask, okay, and what keeps that at a two? And they're like, well, for car accident, as an example, well, I can still get into another car accident, right? So that's another example of when we're not talking about the memory anymore. We're talking about something else. So yes, we can get into a car accident, and we're going to still work on some other memories, present triggers, and future templates yet. We haven't gotten there yet, so I understand that that's still stressful for you. But we're not talking about that just yet. What I am talking about is just this memory, right? And only with this memory, when you're thinking about it on a scale from 0 to 10, how disturbing is the memory to you? Not what happened, not what might happen a week from now, or a month from now, or in the future. What's happening right now when you think of the memory? Usually, that gets them down to a 0. And with that, I mean, there's some things like death and some grief in there that might bring some ecologically valid ones or something like that. But generally, you can get to a 0 for most things, but by recognizing that aspect of things. That they're usually, if it's not a 0, they're usually not thinking about the memory when they add numbers to it. They're thinking about a different memory. They're thinking about other things that are happening in the future. It's all future oriented at that point, which is good. you know. But we do want to be able to show, hey, this memory is done. This memory has a 0 in it. And of course, you still have to do phases 5 and 6 if you haven't done that already on the specific memory that you're working on. Just shows that you're progressing. It's good work. I like it. Um, yeah. So I probably talk. I mean, I guess that's why I'm doing this, right? Probably talk about EMDR all day. Um, So yeah, the SUD thing is always an interesting thing, and I have to pull down some graphics that I've had in previous presentations because I use Jenga blocks a lot in terms of like metaphor, to kind of looking at a memory network, and one of the ways that I did this exact thing, this idea, was having the image of a client looking at a top pile of Jenga blocks, right? And then they're staring at this thing and like, being obviously distressed by it. And over here on the left side, like out of their point of view, is this one little block. And that's the memory we're supposed to work on. But because it's so desensitized, right, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's kind of discarded to the side. Now their attention is going to the other memories that we're not working on yet. And so we got to be like, okay, well, what about that memory over there? Let's move back over here just for a second. We're not done with that one yet. Um, I have that training next month in Connecticut, Danbury. So I'm thinking about bringing Jenga blocks over just to kind of get that metaphor done. I like it. It works. Okay. So we're uh, gonna try to keep doing these. I have to do better at inviting my people, inviting guests, because we have two that are on like out there, but it's we I got to do better at giving them the frame so that we stick to a time, because like, oh, when I'm not ready yet, we need to push it off a little bit or something like that. Different guests, so I got to do better at that. So I will be putting together more of a uh, guest welcoming packet to get them started and kind of make sure that we get that done. But that's exciting for me. I like that kind of stuff. So we're going to continue talking, and looking forward to having more of you comment if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I see there's a couple of you on right now. So anybody out there right now have any questions that I can globally talk about? Again, no specifics if you're going to ask, what about isms or something like that. Yeah. What about isms? All right. Don't see anything. No question, no comments. All right. Sounds good. All right. So as we move forward, today is the Wednesday again. Tomorrow is good. Friday. Friday is good as well. So I'll see you Thursday and Friday. So that will be good. And then next week, I believe we're moving into September. And then Friday we'll be doing I will be out again, so I'll throw up a replay or something like that. The following Friday, I'm actually off all Fridays this week for something, so one thing or another. So again, one of these Fridays I'll be traveling to San Antonio. One of them I'll be in Connecticut, and then one will be a military type obligation, or two of them. I don't know, but a couple military obligations as well. So that's what I'll be doing. So if you need me, you know where to find me. Get me on EMDRnews.com. And I look forward to talking with you and exploring EMDR and mental health and trauma. All right. Have a good one. This has been Doc V, EMDR News. See you later.